Have you ever heard that idea floating around that if a kid struggles with, like, reading or spelling in their own language, that's going to automatically make it harder for them to learn a new language?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a pretty common assumption, right? Seems kind of intuitive, doesn't it?
Right? Like, oh, you're already having trouble with one language. Why would a second one be any easier?
Yeah, it's almost like common sense.
Mm. But today we're going to, like, dive into some research that actually, like, directly investigates that idea.
Yeah, this is going to be really interesting. I think when we actually dig into the data,
Mm-hmm.
it gets a lot more nuanced than that initial assumption.
Yeah, so today we're going to be looking at a systematic review
Oh, cool.
of 16 studies. That's quite a lot of studies.
Yeah, that's a pretty comprehensive review.
Yeah, that's a meta-analysis
Really good stuff.
with almost 1,000 participants,
Wow.
all looking at how kids and adolescents
Okay.
who have poor literacy skills in their native language
Hmm.
learn English as a foreign language.
Okay, so all focused on English. Interesting.
Yeah. So if you're a parent who's, like, concerned about your child learning a new language,
Hmm.
or if you're a teacher trying to figure out the best way to support your students,
Yeah.
or even if you're just someone who's curious about language learning and all the different ways that people learn,
Hmm.
this is the deep dive for you.
Hmm.
We are going on a mission to, like, uncover
Yes.
what the science actually says about foreign language learning,
Yeah.
especially for these young people,
Hmm.
rather than, like, just kind of going with those initial, like, gut reactions, those intuitions.
Yeah, absolutely. We really want to understand, like, what does the collective evidence tell us? And then hopefully maybe offer some surprising insights along the way, some things that people might not expect.
Okay, so let's tackle that initial assumption head on.
Mm-hmm.
The belief that, like, oh, if you're having a tough time with reading and spelling in your first language,
Right.
that automatically you're going to have a hard time in a foreign language.
Yeah, you're destined to struggle.
You're destined to struggle. But, like, this assumption has some real-world consequences, doesn't it, for learners and teachers?
It really does. So, I mean, a lot of times this kind of thinking leads to those students, getting less support in the classroom for foreign languages. And it can even, in some really striking cases, they might even be excused from learning a new language.
Really?
Yeah, the paper actually mentions an Italian law that allows just that. So, exempting students with poor literacy skills
Wow.
from foreign language instruction. Think about that.
Yeah, that's a big decision, isn't it?
It is.
Based on, what seems like kind of a hunch
Yeah.
more than anything else.
More than solid data. And the researchers who did this meta-analysis, they were concerned about policies like that because they raise a good point that maybe these exemptions are based more on what we think or believe to be true rather than what the data actually says.
Right, like what is really happening with these students.
Exactly.
So what are some of those potential downsides?
Well, I mean, think about it. You're missing out on some really valuable cognitive benefits that come from learning a new language. Things like improved focus and self-control. Researchers call that inhibitory control. Even things like theory of mind, being able to better understand other people's perspectives, metalinguistic knowledge, your awareness of how language works in general.
Being able to talk about language.
Exactly. All of that can be boosted by learning another language.
Yeah, so many benefits. And then not to mention, right, like the broader societal implications. Like being able to access different cultures, being able to potentially, like, open up career opportunities down the line. So getting this right is really important.
It is. We really need to understand what the data's saying rather than just going with these assumptions that might be holding some students back.
Okay, so before we jump into the findings, it's important for us to, like, define some terms, because how they actually defined poor literacy skills in this research is pretty important.
Yeah, you can't just kind of have a general feeling of like, oh yeah, the student is struggling.
Right.
It needs to be specific.
Yeah, for a child to be included in the study, they had to have scored low on very specific reading and or spelling tests.
Okay.
And we're talking about a score that is at least one standard deviation below what is expected for their age or grade level.
So that's pretty far behind.
Yeah, so we're talking about a year or a grade behind.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty clear and measurable criteria.
Yeah, not just a teacher's feeling, but an actual score.
Right, exactly. And when they say reading difficulties, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, good question.
So it includes things like reading words, even made-up word sentences, or longer texts in a way that was either inaccurate or very slow. But importantly,
Oh, interesting.
they excluded students who only had trouble understanding what they read if there weren't also difficulties with like the actual decoding of the words themselves.
I see. Okay. So not just comprehension problems alone.
Right. Because sometimes those comprehension problems can just be linked to more general oral language
Right.
difficulties.
Yeah.
And then when they define spelling difficulties, what are they talking about?
So this is struggling to spell words correctly or non-words correctly, whether they're like writing from dictation or writing something spontaneously on their own.
Okay, so pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, pretty comprehensive.
And the ages of these kids in these studies were pretty varied, too.
Oh, yeah.
So we had kids all the way from their first year of formal schooling up to the last year of secondary education.
Okay. So like a huge range there.
Yeah, so it's a good overview across like different stages of development.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so now that we know who we're talking about, let's look at what they found. What is the main takeaway? What is the key finding when you put all this data together?
Well, it's more complex than you might think at first. You know, on average, kids and adolescents with these poor literacy skills, they did tend to score lower on some aspects of learning English compared to their peers with typical literacy skills.
But, yeah, there's a big but here.
There is.
And that's that their performance was a lot more variable.
Yes, more variable.
That's really important for you to understand.
Yeah, it's so important because what that means is while the average might have been lower, the individuals within that group showed a huge range of outcomes.
So like a lot of spread in the data.
Exactly. Lots of spread. Some kids with poor literacy skills did surprisingly well in learning English, while others really struggled. So that average doesn't really tell the full story of what any individual is capable of.
So it's not a universal experience of difficulty. You know, some of these kids who are struggling with literacy in their first language are still finding a way to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so let's look at where they did have some more difficulties on average.
Okay, sounds good.
So the meta-analysis highlighted a few things where, on average, these learners did score lower.
Oh, okay.
And the first one is phonological awareness.
Ah, yeah, phonological awareness. So being able to, like, recognize and play around with the sounds in the language.
Yeah, and that makes sense, right?
Yeah, it makes sense to me, especially given that strong link between phonological skills and reading more generally. That's true in your native language, so why wouldn't it be true in a foreign language as well?
Yeah, makes sense. So phonological awareness, letter knowledge, just knowing your ABCs.
Yeah, knowing your letters.
In English. And maybe not so surprising, reading comprehension.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Like being able to understand the meaning in written English. Now, for these three, they made a really important observation about the studies, which is kind of nice.
Oh, yeah.
Because for these three, they found that there wasn't a lot of what they call heterogeneity, which just means like inconsistency in the results of the different studies.
Okay, so that gives us a little bit more confidence.
Yeah, it makes it a little more reliable.
Yeah.
That these are pretty consistent findings across the studies.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
But it wasn't all areas of difficulty. There was actually one really interesting exception, which is kind of exciting.
Oh, cool. What was that?
So, for understanding the meaning of English words when you hear or read them, what's called receptive vocabulary.
Oh, receptive vocabulary.
The average performance of the two groups, those with poor literacy skills and those without, were basically the same.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, that's fascinating to think about, right? So even if you're finding it hard to like read the words or you're finding it hard to like play around with the sounds of English, you might still be building up a really strong vocabulary knowledge.
That suggests maybe some different skills are at play there.
Right, like maybe vocabulary is tapping into like memory or association more than it's tapping into those decoding and phonetic skills that are so important for reading.
That's a good point. I like that.
Okay, let's go back to this variability idea for a sec.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you mentioned it was such a key finding that they were finding more variability in the group with poor literacy skills, particularly in phonological awareness. Why is that so important?
Well, it's important because that means you can't just make these broad generalizations. It's really highlighting that individual difference aspect of language learning. So while some people with poor literacy skills might struggle with English phonology, others might actually be really good at it.
So you can't just say like, oh, well, you're bad at reading, therefore you're going to be bad at this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, for English reading comprehension,
they actually found that the variability was similar across the two groups.
Interesting.
So that suggests that maybe the factors that influence reading comprehension are kind of consistent, whether or not you're struggling with literacy in your first language.
Gotcha.
And then for receptive vocabulary and liter knowledge, did they find variability there?
Well, this is where it gets a little tricky. So because different studies measured these things in different ways and they had kind of inconsistent results, the variability part couldn't be reliably interpreted.
So too messy.
Yeah, the data was just too messy.
Yeah, too much spread to really get a sense of it.
Exactly.
Okay, so it sounds like this gives us some really good insights, but it also highlights some areas where we need to know more.
Yeah, like any good research study, it has its limitations.
Yeah, let's talk about the limitations.
Yeah.
One of the big ones that jumps out at me
Okay.
is that all of these studies were focused on English as a foreign language.
Yeah, that's a big one because English, as we know, has a really complex, some might say weird spelling system. So it's hard to know if the results would apply to other languages.
Yeah, like languages that have more regular spelling rules.
Exactly.
Like Spanish or German or lots of others.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's something to keep in mind, right? Like if you're learning a language other than English, this might not apply to you.
Right.
What are some of the other limitations?
Well, they also didn't have data on some really important parts of language learning. Things like how well these students could distinguish and produce speech sounds in English, how well they could understand and produce sentences in English, or even just basic stuff like short-term memory in English.
Yeah, those are all pretty fundamental parts of language learning,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Okay, and then that heterogeneity issue, which we talked about.
Right, heterogeneity.
So for some of the ways they measured success in English, like producing spoken words, reading words and non-words, spelling in English, and translating, they found that the different studies had pretty inconsistent results.
Right.
Which made it really hard to say anything conclusive.
Yeah, you just can't really make a strong statement.
Even if there's like a trend in one direction or the other, the fact that the studies were so all over the place means we can't really be sure.
Yeah, we just need more research.
Yeah. Now, they did try to figure out why the results might be so inconsistent. They looked at a bunch of different factors like the learner's native language, how often they were getting English instruction.
Okay, how frequent the instruction was.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
How similar the languages were, like how similar is their native language to English.
Yeah, that's really interesting to think about.
How old they were when they started learning English. And how old they were when their English was tested. So a lot of factors.
A lot of things that could contribute.
But because the original studies didn't always give them enough information,
oh no,
they couldn't really fully investigate all of those factors.
Yeah, you're limited by the information in those original studies.
Yeah, so like, for example, when they were looking at reading words in English, they only had enough information to look at language similarity, age of onset of learning, and age of assessment.
Yeah, and did they find any relationships there?
And none of those three explained the variability.
Okay, so we still don't know.
So, still an open question.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So what does this all mean? Like, if you're a parent, a teacher, a learner, like, what's the takeaway here?
Well, I think the big takeaway is that initial idea that if you have poor literacy skills, you're automatically going to really struggle with learning a foreign language. That's just not supported by the research, especially because there's so much variability.
Yeah, so we need to move away from those automatic assumptions.
Absolutely.
So where do we go from there?
Well, instead of assuming someone's going to have difficulty, educators and parents should be looking very carefully at how each student with poor literacy skills is doing in that foreign language classroom.
Yeah, so monitor their progress.
Yes, monitor their progress. And then tailor the support accordingly. Don't just assume they're going to fail.
Right.
Provide support where it's needed.
So it's really about empowering these learners rather than holding them back.
Exactly.
Based on our assumption.
Empower them, give them a chance, see what they can do.
Yeah. And I think it's a really important reminder that even these students can be successful foreign language learners.
Absolutely. And, you know, maybe even enthusiastic learners.
Yeah. And that's something that we need to foster.
We do.
Okay. So looking forward, what are some of those big questions that we still need to answer?
Well, I think understanding the reason for that variability is really important.
Yeah, like why are some kids
I think
succeeding
for me,
and some struggling?
exactly. What are those factors?
Yeah. And are there particular profiles of literacy challenges in a person's first language
Yeah.
that make it harder or easier
Right.
to learn a new language?
Yeah, that would be really valuable information. For example, if a student's struggling mainly with reading
Mm-hmm.
versus struggling with reading and spoken language, does that
Mm-hmm.
make a difference?
Right. Or what kinds of reading and spelling difficulties are we talking about here?
Yeah, that's really important to know.
And what about the role of like someone's overall language background?
Oh, yeah.
Like, are they bilingual?
Yeah.
Are they monolingual? Does that influence their ability
Sure.
to learn a third language?
That's a really great question. We also need way more information about how the foreign language is being taught.
Yeah.
How frequent are the lessons? How long are they? When did they start? All that kind of stuff.
Right. Like the details really matter.
They do.
And of course, the elephant in the room is
Yeah.
that this is all about English.
Right. What about those other languages?
What about the rest of them?
We need to see if those same patterns hold true.
Yeah.
You know, those challenges and that variability. And the researchers also point out that in the future, meta-analyses shouldn't just focus on the average differences,
Yeah.
but really hone in on that variability because that's where the really rich information is.
Right. Like what's happening with individuals.
Exactly.
Okay. So big picture, what should our listeners take away from this?
You should remember that while, on average, kids with poor literacy skills might have some extra challenges in things like phonology and knowledge and reading comprehension. The big takeaway, the thing to remember, is that there's huge variability.
Huge variability. Don't forget that.
Yeah. So don't write these kids off.
Don't write them off.
Don't assume they can't do it.
Because that's not what the research is saying.
Exactly.
Not at all. So as a final thought, what should our listeners, what should everyone be thinking about?
I think we all need to consider how we can change our approaches in education and support to better recognize this potential for learning languages. What kind of personalized teaching, what kind of support is really going to help these kids thrive?
Yeah, really important questions. And if you want to learn more, you can look up the original paper by Van Hagen, Conan, and Stady in Educational Psychology Review.
Yeah, great paper. Lots of details there.
Yeah, check it out. And this is really just the beginning, right?
It is. This research is constantly evolving.
We're learning more and more about how these individual differences play out in the classroom.
And getting that nuanced perspective is so important to create a learning environment that really works for everyone.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.